Hey, everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books to those that have impacted the lives of my colleagues, my network, friends, coworkers, collaborators. So these are great leads that I speak with to get a good sense of what those books are that have made an impression on them, what they've done in their business, work, whatever it may be. All those lives transfer over into each other. Those lessons move from one world to the next. So the way that I do it in this particular series is I cover any number of categories of books. So in the first one, I cover a book that they're schooling me about that I haven't read. Second category is when we've read the same book and are discussing it, whether specifically for this episode or we read it in our previous lives. And then the third one is when I've had authors and or publishers on here who want to share the message of the books that they've put out there with this audience, kind of in that same vein. Why did you write the book? What drew you to the book? What are the lessons kind of thing. But in this particular episode, I'll be talking with a colleague, and we're going to be covering a book that she's going to share with me that I haven't read yet. I've heard a lot about it, but I haven't read it yet. So in this episode, my guest will be Jill Siegel. And Jill is a branding strategist, marketing professional with 25 plus years of experience in industries including advertising, hospitality, healthcare, media, nonprofit, publishing, and law. She's worked in collaboration with key members of leadership teams and executive committees to develop and foster new strategic relationships and revenue streams for both public and private organizations. She's managed and cultivated hundreds of high-profile client accounts, projects, and events, and has been recognized for launching notable strategic programs to optimize ROI, client experience, and market engagement. Today, Jill focuses her work in environments where giving back is the driving force. She's the managing director of the Connecticut Women's Council, a branding strategist at J. Lauren Consulting, and a cause entrepreneur at One Hope Wine, an award-winning Napa Valley winery that gives back with every bottle. She's currently enrolled in Copper Beach Institute's mindfulness facilitation certification cohort, and she will be certified as a mindfulness facilitator after she graduates this November. She's on the development committee for Mental Health Connecticut. She's certified in mental health first aid, and after going through her own mental health crisis in 2016, she's an advocate for helping those dealing with mental health challenge. Jill believes there's nothing more important than kindness and that we rise by lifting others. She's a mom of two daughters, aged 24 and 21, and considers motherhood and her girls her greatest gift and life accomplishment. And I met Jill through my work with the American Marketing Association. We just recently met, I think, well, not recently, probably within the last year, Jill. So in any case, I'm grateful for the work that we did together for the association. And thank you for joining me for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I think it was just over a year ago.
It's amazing how time flies, especially
Mhm.
when we're talking pandemic time.
Definitely. Thank you.
So, Jill, I covered in your bio the various industries and accolades and work that you've done. But who are you today? What is your work look like in the everyday? What is it you're doing day to day? I know that's a loaded question because you are so busy, but can you give us a walkthrough of what you're up to?
Sure. So I will say that currently, right now, because I started with the Connecticut Women's Council in June of this year. So, when anything is new, it takes up a lot of your time. And they had the same managing director for about 14 years prior. So there's a lot to do, but it's an incredible organization with some of the most accomplished and powerful women in Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut centric. So it's an honor to work with these women, many of which I've known from my past in when I was at the Hartford Business Journal, and the organization is now celebrating its 30th anniversary. That is this year. So that's another big thing we're working on right now. The organization is really a resource for professional women. Um, Now more than ever, with everyone more remote, connections are incredibly important. So it gives an opportunity, mostly now in person. Only a few programs are virtual, but it really helps the dynamics of that for people in the workforce. Some are retired, some are still in the workforce, some are young, and some are navigating what it's like to begin their careers at a time when it's not the same as it used to be. So this is a very, very resourceful group of women that are there in a sense. And the connection to my bio is, truly we rise by lifting others.
Mhm.
And that's what this group does.
Awesome. And I
And
mean,
yeah, and then in
go ahead.
addition
I'm
to
sorry.
that, I apologize. So in
No, no,
addition
no.
to that, I am a cause entrepreneur with One Hope Wine. One Hope Wine, or I don't know who found who. Me found, if I found One Hope, or if they found me about a little over a year ago. I just celebrated my 1 year anniversary.
Congrats.
Because when I left, so a big part of what I'm going to talk about today is that in 2019, I made the conscious decision to exit corporate, um, to take my body of work and create something new. I've been a single mom since my girls were 6 and 8, so I was climbing a very, 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 very big mountain, getting them through high school. Getting through the grade school and then high school. I raised them in a great community with great school systems, and it was like, get them to where they need to go, get them launched. And so that was my goal. That was my main goal. And so, while doing so, certainly the corporate grind was a way to do it, to
Mhm.
support
Yeah,
everything I had to
absolutely.
support.
Absolutely.
Um, so this will segue into a lot of other things we're going to talk about because you know you go through different phases as a parent and as a professional, and then life throws you different things. So I always was a person that powered through everything. So when when I spoke, well, in my bio about my mental health crisis in 2016, I was fully entrenched in working probably 50 to 60 plus hours a week while raising at that time, teenagers going to college and getting ready for college and all that. So I didn't pay attention to myself. I didn't pay attention. I wasn't sleeping. I didn't sleep for 6 months, chalked it off to other things and all kinds of things. I was performing at the highest of levels. I did lose 30 pounds. I didn't know why. I chalked it up to stress. Again, uh, this whole thing, when we get to the end, you'll understand where I'm going.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
of course.
so anyway, I stayed, I got through that. The firm I worked with was absolutely amazing. I took about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks off, and, got the help that I needed to get through that crisis. And, I'll say I made a commitment myself to always, always take care of myself first, pay attention. And I always thought I was, in a sense, because I always lived by the term, oxygen mask to yourself first.
Mm,
If I'm okay,
yeah.
they're okay. I always lived by that, but I was powering through everything a little too much. So, and the stress levels got really high. It gets a little higher and higher and higher as things get harder and more difficult, and as our kids grow into different phases. So
Yeah.
everything was great. They were terrific kids, and now I'm reaping the benefits. So it's really wonderful. But the point is that it did take its toll. I stayed at the firm for an additional 3 years, and when my girls both had graduated from high school and were both in college, um, I made the conscious decision. I sold my home. I kind of simplified life. They were both technically out of the house 5 months before COVID.
Technically, yeah.
Before COVID, this is again, life throws you things. So here I was. I'm like, I'm going on my own. I'm going to start my own consultancy. And so I did so in August or September of 2019. I had 2 clients. I was going to grow my client list and I was doing fine. And then the pandemic hit. So we all know the rest. So I still had my consultancy. It didn't grow. So then I realized that, well, I'm building a consultancy, so I'm going to do whatever I can and maybe attain experience in an industry where it's needed right now, where I can learn more about. So I had always had healthcare clients with all of the companies and firms I've worked for as clients, but I never worked in healthcare before. So at that time, the largest hospital organization in the state of Connecticut is Hartford Healthcare. So I
Mhm,
took a role at Hartford Healthcare as part of their COVID. First, it was as a part of the COVID testing operation team,
mhm.
and I worked on the front lines, right behind the testers in trailers across our great state, working with our great Hartford Healthcare and our state entities. Probably one of the best state organized initiatives throughout the pandemic. When we came out with vaccine, we then morphed to the vaccine operational team, and I was also kind of cross practicing at their community care center. So I had 8 months working within Hartford Healthcare. And every day I was working with doctors, nurses, people like me from all different streams of life. I was working with executives from the hospital organization. I was working with the National Guard. I was working in trailers in the middle of fields. I was working in the prison system. I was working everywhere. And it was like little MASH units set up throughout the state. So I did that. And that's when, after I left that, fully vaccinated after 8 months, of course, we were all vaccinated at that point. I traveled a bit, got my travel in. Travel is incredibly important to me. And then is when One Hope found me, or I found One Hope, because it was very important to me. I wanted to start doing work that was for the greater good. That was part of my consultancy. I wanted to work for companies or help companies do their work better, that you were either contributing to the world positively in regards to the environment or in regards to a nonprofit organization. So that was my goal before COVID. Of course, everything kind of got scrambled, but I stuck to it. And when I found One Hope, I was like, wait, this is a wine company that was founded on giving back with every bottle. What is this all about? I learned more about it. I fell in love with the wines, and I'm like, how can I not want to do this? It's
Mhm.
incredible. So basically, the way it's done is through private tasting events, fundraising events with nonprofits. You know, we help them raise money for their bottom line, and in addition, we help them raise awareness about their nonprofit organization. So I would say right now, between the Connecticut Women's Council and One Hope Wine, that's all part of what I'm doing. And then my J. Lauren Consulting is still there because underlying, I'm a branding and marketing strategist. So that happens every so often too, with little projects here and there.
I mean, I love that that's all mixed in. I think long gone are the days where you ask somebody what they do and they're like, "I'm an accountant,"
Yeah. I mean,
or
some
"I'm a
people,
janitor," or
yeah,
some people, yeah, and there's
some
nothing wrong with
people,
that at all. There's nothing wrong with
yeah,
that at all.
yeah.
But
And
I
I
love
mean,
seeing
yeah,
variety because I think the roles that you have, what
yeah,
you learn in one, you can bring and transfer some lessons over to the other ones.
they
Like it
all,
keeps you
yes.
sharp because you're not just kind of in that tunnel of one environment. You're jumping between those different hats that you wear.
Yes, and my career prepared me for that because I always worked within so many industries, even when I was within one industry, even when I was in the hospitality industry or in media and publishing, I had so many client types. And I consider myself a little bit of a Jill of all trades
Mm,
because I always say I know a little about a lot. I really
yeah,
do.
yeah.
And, you know, I think for sure that's the reason why when I was at the Hartford Business Journal and then the law firm of Shipman and Goodwin was my client, and they asked me to, can you come on board and help us with client relations and business development? And I pressed them. I had 6 hours of interviews, and I'm like, are you sure you don't want someone with legal experience? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? And they kept saying, no, 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 we want someone just like you, because I can kind of carry on a conversation and understand what's going on pretty much with any type of room. And then, of course, the first 2 years at Shipman and Goodwin, I felt like I was in law school because I had to learn more than
The
you could have ever
lingo, the
imagined.
vernacular,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
processes.
So, yeah.
So you led up from leaving your corporate to now. What did without going deep into your life, what did your life look like before that in terms of what did your path to now look like? In terms of developing who you were, studying what you may have studied in school, or Uh, where do you trace back your career path where it start little building blocks? For
Mhm.
instance, what did you go to school for? What does that path look like to up
Mhm.
until the point that you just started at a few minutes ago?
Yeah. Well, I have a communications degree and a minor in marketing. So everything absolutely connects throughout my career to my education. I use it in everything I do. I always loved my major because I feel I can do it anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just, of course, I started in the traditional, like I think I wrote to you about in the advertising agency grind, started there in New York City doing that. And then I was like, well, I want to work in an industry where I was still young. I still didn't have children. And I was like, so I'm like, oh, so then my passion for travel, I followed that hospitality. I worked for Senate Corporation, the largest hospitality franchise company in the world. I didn't have kids. I traveled all the time. I was never home. And so we were doing events back to back for sometimes 6 weeks at a time,
Wow.
all over the country. So, you know, I think in the back of my mind, I knew that and it gets to later about my life's, biggest accomplishment and is my children. I think I knew that when I became a mother, that a lot was going to change. And I married one of my sweethearts from college, and we kind of, we worked really hard. He was in the software industry in the 90s, and I was doing my thing. And we would often meet on trips, wherever we were, we both traveled and worked really hard. And, we talked about if we had the ability for me to stay home while our kids are little, I would. We don't have family in this area. It would have just been full on, we're on our own.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a little non-traditional. I mean, I know a lot of people that were doing that, but I knew a lot of people are like, oh my God, I could never stay home with my kids. And, you know, anyway, so I think at that point I knew, like, as I was nearing that age, that I'm like, so I went through this, obviously, when I became a mom at the end of my 29th year of life. um, I stayed home for 7 years until mine were, um, I think 4 and 6, something like that.
Yeah.
And so that was part of that little path because you know um, that's a completely different experience as part of a woman's career, at least in the last 2 to 3 decades. Um, you know, so it was a conscious decision that I made, and it was something that I wanted to do, and I was able to do it, so I did it.
How do you think that role, stay-at-home mom for 6 years, how do you think that contributed to who you are as a professional today?
Well, when I was during that time, so it kind of also connects to where I am today, because I always said that if I was able to do that, if I was able to stay home with my kids, that I would then use my time to volunteer and
Mhm.
be on boards and be on committees and do these things that I could never do before when I was too busy traveling and too busy being like a young, fun, selfish person.
Yeah.
So I basically did. And I was on the board of the Glastonbury YMCA. I was on the committee for the Riverfront Community Center in Glastonbury, Connecticut, raised the roof for our new senior center and community center. I was vice president of Hadassah in my community, which is a Zionist Israeli female organization.
Mhm.
Um, I did that. I'm probably forgetting a whole bunch of other things. And so in that, I kept my resume really kind of active. And at the same time, I was at home losing my mind, watching Weather Channel all the time, because that was the way that I always joked about it, because that was my thing. I would watch the Weather Channel like all day while holding babies, because I felt like that was how I could see what was going on in the rest of the world.
That's much better than daytime TV.
I
Daytime
never
TV
watched
is
daytime TV.
absolute shit.
I never,
Daytime TV is horrible,
I don't watch daytime TV. I'm not a,
except
I'm,
for The Price is Right. That's
yeah,
it.
exactly. But so I did. So I watched Weather Channel. So in top of that, so again, most of my experience was in New York, and New Jersey prior to that. So I started to get the Hartford Business Journal delivered at home,
Okay.
and I'd read it. I'd stay on top of things, and lo and behold, in their paper, good old fashioned style, they were advertising that they needed a special projects person to come on board. So I started at 9 hours a week as a special projects coordinator or a special projects manager for the Hartford Business Journal. And
Gotcha.
so that became and I took the job as my stepping stone. I'm like, oh, this
Yeah.
is a great stepping stone. I didn't step off the stone. I became
For how long?
promoted 10 years. So
That's
and the
amazing.
and the reason why it was so perfect was because I was it for my kids, and my ex-husband, because then when they were 6 and 8, I got divorced. My ex-husband traveled extensively, and I needed a job where it was a great job, but I didn't need to travel. So we were part of New England Business Media. So the furthest our publications went were up to Maine. We had Connecticut publications, Massachusetts publications, and Maine. So it was perfect. And I got to know the entire business community really throughout Connecticut. And so it was a beautiful path, I think.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and so I had to cut back, of course, on some of my volunteer work while I did this and was doing everything else. And then it kind of comes full circle again, where I'm like, I'm making a conscious decision. And why am I wearing so many hats? And why am I doing so many things? Because I'm trying to make up for a big corporate paycheck. And I am chasing that. I'm chasing that dream of creating it myself.
What 2 questions. The first one is, so what was it that triggered you in the last couple years to do work from the heart? Like, I know you volunteered before when you were home with your daughters and you were on the various boards, but then when it came around and you left corporate to go back into that kind of work, what was it? What was the trigger? What was that moment, or what was the motivation specifically in that time to go back to that work?
Well,
Was there a
because
particular moment that kind of pushed you
it
to do it, or an
it
experience?
it was definitely a collection of moments where probably I could remember, starting at the Hartford Business Journal or when I was at Shipman and Goodwin. The work that we would do at either one of these organizations that just felt great, where I knew that these organizations were making a difference. And just to bring it more current, my last role before leaving corporate was at Shipman and Goodwin. And I worked primarily in our business and finance practice, and in there we kind of spearheaded the life sciences, this biotech group.
Mhm.
I had the honor of working with uh, Yale New Haven Hospital and the Yale management, you know, the what's it called? The management for all businesses spinning out of Yale University. And so these people dedicate their lives to curing cancer and other terrible diseases and or medical devices that help people use their hands or walk or hear or
Mhm.
see. In fact, right over here in Farmington, we worked with Yukon Tip. We worked with Lambda Vision, people helping people with their vision. So we worked with all these startups and helped them, form their businesses and protect themselves so that when they are acquired, they're set up and all that. But that was just incredible to me. And then in addition to that team, I worked with our environmental team that was part of our real estate, construction, environmental, land use and zoning team. I learned more about land use, zoning, and environmental everything than I ever could have imagined.
Jill of
And
all trades.
yeah, and that team, we worked on things, oil spills, cleanups. I mean, things that took 30 years. The Mill River in Fairfield, Connecticut,
Mhm.
Shipman and Goodwin was working on that with a company called Exide, a very large battery company. The project took 30 years, but they,
Wow.
I was there for the closing of that. I was there for the project closeout. And, these things are like incredible, and so I became really involved with different organizations attached to these different industries, biotech and life sciences and that whole world. And then, of course, in the environmental and sustainability world. So I would say that, and then coupled with Harvard Business Journal, all the different organizations that we always worked with and supported, and as part of the business community, those were all the little pieces that
Hmm.
connected to, okay, I'm working and I'm hustling and I'm making a paycheck and all this, but what is it that I feel really good about? It's always
Hmm.
on the days that I was working on the projects that I was like, this is making a difference in the world. You know, this
Yeah.
is making
Yeah.
a difference. And that's the pieces that I grabbed onto and said, if I can do this on my own, I want to work on that stuff.
Amazing. The other question I had was, thank you for that breakdown of everything from education to the various roles that you had and stay-at-home mom and volunteering. So, I'm just curious, one more question about your past is what was it from your childhood or your experiences that made you go into school for communications and marketing?
Definitely probably just the natural skills that we know we're better at than others. I always excelled in writing. I love writing. I love the spoken word, the written word. Um, I was not a math or science student. I was definitely a student of language, creativity, and
So
I
it just
thought,
made sense. It was like an
yeah,
extension of
it
what
made
you were passionate
sense.
about
And
already.
I did feel too that I knew I loved business. I knew that my family was part of a family business, a large tire distribution company in the Northeast. So I watched my father, my uncle, and my cousin run and grow this business. And so I had the opportunity to watch things in action.
Yeah.
And I knew I loved business, but I just didn't know what business, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I knew I could apply this to any type of business.
Yeah, that's the best part about marketing and communications. I mean, I have a degree in marketing, but I really never really used it.
Yeah.
But in the work that we did with the American Marketing Association Connecticut chapter, I
Mhm.
realized I was doing social media and putting out publishing, just sharing articles and commenting on it. And it's almost like I convinced myself. Here I am trying to convince the audience that, the AMA, or show them that the AMA is passionate about marketing, why
Right.
it's important, all that stuff. And then as I'm writing these pieces or sharing an article and commenting on an article from Inc. or Entrepreneur, whatever the publication may be, in writing these things out like on a daily basis, I realized just how much marketing and communications are just applicable to everything.
Yeah.
Especially, I became fascinated with storytelling and just getting out there. And I realized how many of us, how much we don't tell our story.
Right. And how now it's so important because, again, we're so detached by technology that if we don't engage and tell the stories and connect,
Yeah.
yeah. And that will flow a little into Atlas of the Heart. And, but it's funny because I have two daughters. One has my brain. She's marketing, communications. She's using it she's a recruiter. She's now a corporate recruiter. So, but you need that. A big part of her role is obviously communicating with all her candidates,
Mhm.
but then reading through that and understand, and also it's important that she finds people that know how to communicate because,
Yeah.
yeah, so she's using that, but she loves writing and all that. My other daughter has the finance and accounting brain. And but what's interesting is I believe that my influence, I see little things she does as a finance and accounting little genius, but I see little things she does that really make her stand out because I guess she has a little of me in her too,
Yeah. Yeah.
because she just finished a 10-week internship at KPMG in Boston. And she wrote handwritten thank you notes to all the people she worked for. And one or two of them, took the time to say, thank you so much. No one has ever done that. Like, she took the time to do that. And there's other
Yeah.
examples, but anyway, she got offered a full-time job for after when she graduates. So
Oh, that's
that's really
amazing.
exciting. But, you know, sometimes, yes, we're born with certain sides of the brain, but there's definitely some nurture in that too. It's our environment. It's our who we are, but it's our environment plays into that too.
Yeah. And I mean, even though she's like the math whiz in finance, she can use those communication skills as well. I mean,
Yes.
aside from the gesture of writing a note for somebody, I've worked in financial management, for, 16, 17 years in public financial management.
Okay.
And it's amazing how you can have people that know the numbers, you can have people that know the
Yep.
budgets, but if they don't know how to tell the story of why the numbers look the way they
It's
are, where they
useless.
should be, if you can't tell the story and all you do is throw up a graph or a chart, you're going to
Mm-mm.
lose your audience, whoever they may be. So, I mean, she could stand to learn a little more of that side too as well, because I think
Oh
it'll
yeah,
give her, I think it'll give her a leg up if she's able to transform that information into a great story. But
definitely.
I mean, that's just me.
And
That
I do
that's just
right, and I do see even in the courses she has taken, they are paying more attention to that now.
yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
you don't want people's eyes to, like, glaze over because,
yeah.
you're just throwing stats at them and things like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it is interesting, and it is like a little science project raising children and seeing your little them
Yeah.
grow into
And
these adults and doing amazing things. And like I said, I'm reaping the benefits now because they're both just they've made me very proud.
congratulations on that.
Thank
It's
you.
huge. So Jill, why don't you introduce the book that we're reading? Why don't you introduce the book and just share why it is, you chose to read the book, look for the book, find the book, or if the book found you? What was it that
Sure.
led you to the book?
So I will admit I had heard of the book, but it as I think as you had mentioned before, I'm in a 10-month mindfulness facilitator training course right now, and I will graduate in November. It's a 200-hour course, and so there's classes and retreats and all this that's involved in this. So that someday after November, the end of November, I will be certified so that I will be able to facilitate um, mindfulness practices in lots of different environments, and it might be in in business, it might be for like the senior citizen community, it might be for adolescents eventually, it might be with therapists to help them complement what they do in traditional talk therapy. A lot of therapists are combining mindfulness in what they do. Some do it and
Mhm.
some don't. Some are so overwhelmed with patients that they just can't, so they need additional people to help with that. So anyway, but part of the course is required reading, and one of the books that's required is Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. So that's why I said, this will be my book. And yes,
And what made you want to do that mindfulness facilitation certification?
uh, that is directly related to the fact that the mental health crisis in, well, all over the world, but let's just talk about the United States,
Mhm.
is just the, the biggest, one of the biggest issues. And so many other of the other issues are connected to mental illness. We have a gun control issue in this country, and I do believe, as far as gun violence and things like that, mental health is at the crux of a lot of things. People need more care. The system needs more people in it. That it's just there's not enough to go around. I have friends that are psychologists and they see patients for 12 hours a day and they're still turning people away. So, as much as like if money weren't an issue, I would have gone back to school and I would have become a psychologist.
Yeah.
And I would have, but I'm not doing that to myself financially. So I said, well, I know that mindfulness has helped me through my mental health journey. And I learned about this incredible opportunity to become certified through Copper Beach Institute, which is like a highly renowned mindfulness institute all over the world. We have people in this cohort from Pakistan, from people in Seattle, Washington, people in the Caribbean. So it's pretty amazing. Um, mhm.
How did you find mindfulness when you were going through your the stage where you were,
Well, that's
going
just the
through those
point.
difficulties?
I didn't know it existed. I didn't know most things existed. And when you're going through a crisis and you don't know what's there, it doesn't. It's not there. And I didn't know any of it. And so I went through traditional route, through uh, medical and hospitals and all that kind of stuff. When I was, kind of going through the healing process, I started to do yoga and meditation, of course.
Mhm.
And then slowly after that, because I started to do some of those things, I started to learn more about mindfulness.
Mm,
But
okay.
then also the same, if you have to think about the time frame we've gone through and the years, it also everything else became more in the forefront. After I think Michael Phelps started to talk about his issues, and other people started to talk about
Mhm.
their issues, and it became more of a movement. And so mindfulness became much more front and center. And I'm doing this because if I can help one person, you know, in a way to give them a way to get through a difficult time, either while they're waiting to get help from a doctor or while they're helping to be admitted or before they do something that's potentially harmful to their life. If I can help one person, then I'm happy. And then I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? So, it's kind of like, you know, in other words, I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. So,
Yeah.
and I'm educated. I have plenty of friends that are doctors. And let me tell you, when you're going through the traditional route, if you don't know things about like Mental Health Connecticut right here in our state, the
Yeah.
resources they provide, or if you don't know about NAMI, or if you don't know about, um, other integrative medicine, such as meditation, yoga, mindfulness, if you
Mhm.
don't know what's offered in the community, if you don't know all these things, you feel very paralyzed. And so it's basically just to kind of be a liaison between all of that,
Great
but to
word.
also help people in crisis
Yeah.
during that crisis period.
Yeah, and I forgot that it was well, I mean, you pointed him out, so it was kinda like your beacon or the story that you saw of Michael Phelps and sharing his mental health issues, and it is true, like, he was one of the first ones that you really saw publicly, especially at such a high stature in life with so many accomplishments.
Hmm.
And typically the first question is, well, why would they feel like that if they accomplished all this, if they've done so much, if they have all these endorsements, if they've won all these medals and they have all this money and blah, blah. But you just never know.
You
You never
never
know.
know.
I
And
mean, there was a story recently, I think in the last couple days of she's like a news anchor out in Wisconsin that died by suicide and I could hear it in her sister's voice who was commenting for the story that I was reading. Almost like her sister knew that the facade isn't always, telling of what's going on, but
yeah,
you could
never.
hear it in what you go find it after we're done here, Jill, because there's just something compelling about the way her sister put it,
Mhm.
that it was almost like a holy shit, like I really didn't think this was gonna happen. Anything like this could happen because she was just so loved, that she was such a happy person. She was the happiest person you knew. Like she always lit up the room. Like that even though you may hear, listen, the facade is not everything. People can be hurting. Even though she might have known that in the past, she was still caught off guard. And it just goes to show you, you just never know.
Absolutely. I mean, just I think a year ago, I think it was at Miss USA.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that this happens time and time and time again. And again, I will say, okay, and this is the thing, as a person going through something, it's not even like a facade. You're just going through your life,
Mm,
and then like these things are happening to you, but you're not really aware. And then, again, I was powering through. I probably looked better than I ever looked because I did lose 30 pounds. And I was at a very, a really great position in my career trajectory, considering, again, I needed to be close to home and stay home and be
mhm.
near my kids and all that till they graduated. So in the little I could do in this, I felt I was in a good place. I mean, I was in a great place, but life was closing in on me. And,
Mm,
you know, no one would have ever known from the outside, you know? And it was only my closest of closest friends that knew, like, I wasn't sleeping, I was losing weight, and all these other things, because I'm not going to talk about it with the rest of the world. You talk about it with your best friends, and they,
yeah.
we all tried to help me, you know. But then, sometimes you just, yeah. So it's important to find the help you need before it's too late.
Yeah. And I
So
mean, hopefully with that discussion being at the forefront, um, unfortunately, all these stories that come out with that same kind of commentary, we never expected anything like this to happen. Hopefully we heed those lessons and each of us learns because I mean, each of us can be stubborn where we keep things to ourselves. So hopefully we learn to open up a little more and just share of who we are.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, and the thing is sometimes, when things get so bad, you could just you could think one thing but or hear one thing. It's just that there needs to be more help. There needs to be more services available, and through major health organizations, and so um it's getting there. it's
Yeah.
it's getting there. It's gonna take a long time, but at least, like you said, it's more out in the forefront and people are paying attention to it. um
Yeah, we bring it up and we talk about it and, um the comment is to remove the stigma. And the thing is, I mean, it's you shouldn't be um reducing a stigma. It shouldn't be looked at as a stigma. I mean, it's a part of life.
yeah.
How long how who knows how long society has been
Hmm.
like that, but it's only coming out now.
Right.
Who knows how many people suffered through it, made it through their entire life and died by
Oh,
natural causes, but they suffered
thousands,
their entire
millions.
life.
Right.
So who knows? But I mean,
Yeah.
you, I, and other people will just keep that conversation going. I think that'll
Yeah.
help a lot. Is just making it a part of the normal conversation, a normal
Yes.
normal part of just living.
Right.
It's not, oh, we have to pay special attention to get rid of this stigma. No, it's just it's who we are. It's who we are.
Yeah. It's just like we might have a heart condition or we might have a whatever. This is
Yeah,
just part of our brain doing its
absolutely.
thing.
So, okay, Atlas of the Heart. What in what way was it part of the curriculum? What was it that the curriculum wanted you to get out of the book? And then we can jump into actually what you did get out of the book and what
Mhm.
the book looked like. But why was the book included in the curriculum?
Well, they didn't really say. It was just one of the choices, and we did have choices. But I would say now, after reading the book and being in the course so many months, it is because it has to do with it's all about understanding our own emotions and our own where it all comes from and the history of it all.
Because the
And
full title of the book is Atlas of the Heart: Mapping Meaningful Connection and the Language of Human Experience. I
exactly.
get
And then
that gives it a little more content.
yeah, and there's a quote I'll start off with, and
Sure.
then I'll talk a little bit more about it. But when I started this mindfulness course, I thought, well, I'm going to learn a lot about mindfulness. I'm going to learn a lot about mindfulness. Let me tell you, I learned I'm learning more about myself than anything else. And that connects directly with what one of the last things that she talks about and what I'll close out with about this book. And that is the one surprise to me. Of course, I'm learning about mindfulness too, but it is such deep learning about myself and my own emotions and my own things and others and how it connects and in this big beautiful web of the world that we live in.
Yeah.
So the quote is, in a world where perfectionism, pleasing, and proving are used as armor to protect our egos and our feelings, it takes a lot of courage to show up and be all we can be when we can't control the outcome. It also takes discipline and self awareness to understand what to share and with whom. Vulnerability is not oversharing, it's sharing with people who have earned the right to hear our stories and our experiences. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's our greatest measure of courage. So that's the quote. And, you know, it takes courage to do self work, it takes courage to self improve,
Hmm.
all that. So that's what, I connect with, as well as the fact of what I said before about, I was powering through everything. I was always like, had my superwoman cape on. I couldn't show weakness because then I'd be failing or I would let my kids down. And I realized through my own, you know, fall and rise and all that, you know, there is strength in weakness. There is so much strength in weakness. I just didn't know it, or I was
Hmm.
afraid of it, or I just thought if I fell, I'd fall. But there's so much growth and there's so much that happens, during those times.
Yeah.
And there is another piece of reading which I'll talk about for 1 second because perhaps
Sure.
you've heard of the trapeze. The trapeze is like a fable, and it's about letting go of one trapeze bar, hurtling over the void before you grab onto the next.
Hmm.
That how scary it is when we make changes, or when we make whatever. We're letting go. We're letting go of the trapeze bar. That could be letting go of a relationship. That could be letting go of a job. That could be letting go of moving, you know. And people sometimes don't do any of it because they're afraid to let go. And anyway, but the truth of the matter is that hurt in the trapeze, I recommend everyone reads it. You could just Google it. It just says, that's where the most growth happens. Hurtling over the void. We just might learn how to fly. But it's scary as shit, as you said before, when you're hurtling over and there's nothing but like rocks and scary things underneath.
Yeah.
So, but it takes courage. And that's what she talks about here. And in a real, like, more nitty gritty about, so Brene Brown is a emotions researcher, which is
Hmm.
such a cool title.
Right.
And so in this book, she explains for us how biologically, how we're made, and biographically, like our story, our history, our childhood, or other things, help us understand ourselves better and understand how we relate to others, and then how that shapes almost everything for us.
Mm.
So it's really important. And again, I didn't start realizing this stuff till really recently, in like recent years. In
Oh
other
yeah,
words,
me too.
yeah. And
Yeah.
in other words, she helps us make sense of our human experience and our connection with the people we love, the people we live with, the people we work with, go to school with, etc. It's all part of our human experience. And then she takes us through the whole book, many different chapters. There's certain things that stand out to me. I remember she dives right into places we go when things are uncertain or too much. And then she talks about stress and fear and
Mm.
overwhelmment and all that stuff. And then I remember she did a whole thing on disappointment and how disappointment can like create resentment. Um, what we do when things are beyond us or things don't come out the way we thought they would. And she emphasizes the importance with that of curiosity and opening ourselves up to the world rather than withdrawing or lashing out when we realize our limited humanity. She talks about, the 5 painful experiences and when we're hurting, and differentiates between like anguish and a type of healthy sadness. And then
Yeah.
unhealthy and healthy sadness. You know what I
Yes.
mean? That kind of stuff. Um, and yeah, and then I, the part I was going to get to is about, you know, she basically concludes that the whole theory of the book is her findings, I guess you could say, is that she's come to believe that we must belong to ourselves before we can belong to others. And so with mindfulness and the core, this is why they had us read this book, because again, here I was setting off into this course. Like, I'm going to learn about mindfulness. I'm going to learn about,
Mhm.
I'm like, no, I'm learning how to belong to myself. I'm learning so much about me and how I am as a person, and how that's how that affects the rest of my life because of everyone that I work with and deal with in my personal life and professional life. Um, and she writes, while examining emotions and walking alongside each other is work and requires vulnerability, it is the essence of the human experience and some of the most important work we can do. So that is, yeah, it's work.
Yeah, it's work just because you have to reprogram yourself.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? You go through a lifetime of looking things a certain way, responding to things in a certain way. I love the fact that you mentioned that there's different kinds of sadness. Um, I love the I think you had mentioned that she said that there was a power in being disappointed. Hopefully, I'm not misspeaking, but that's what
Well,
I
that disappointment, the disappointment can lead to resentment. And
yeah.
to to keep check on that, I've experienced that with people in my life
Mhm.
where I've seen where their own disappointments can contribute to resentment,
Yeah.
their own resentment or resentment just in their whole
Yeah.
aura. And then with the power, I think, that you're talking about from before is, vulnerability is not weakness. It is our greatest measure of courage. And again, that there is strength in weakness.
Absolutely. I think I mean it's one of these common themes that comes up a lot in this series. And something that I always bring up again because I'm
Mhm.
curious about that two-pronged approach, working on adults, working with adults, and at the same time providing students, younger people with those tools to prepare themselves for the trials, tribulations, challenges, obstacles of life. It's not to make it easy for them. It's not to make it free of challenges or hardship.
Right.
But I think there's a way to, I think maybe those of us that didn't have those tools, we were resilient enough to make it to this point. But I think we would have been a little more efficient in how resilient we were had we had these tools way back when. Things still would have
Yes.
hurt, they still would have stung, but we would have had a set of tools to help us kind of draw back to center and then go back and try again. So I'm just always curious about setting that stage for younger people. Again, not to make life easy, but to make life more efficient where they're tackling their issues, but they're instead of spending, I'm exaggerating,
Mhm.
years getting over something, they're spending months refining their approach to it and then learning from it and moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, and learning from it is the most important thing. And we could
Yeah.
have the most painful experiences, and it's always going to be with us,
Yes.
but it's
Yes.
learning from it and learning how we got through it. And yeah, and to your point, again, reflecting on my younger daughter who's a senior at Bentley University, finance accounting major. So when I started taking my mindfulness course, she said, "Oh, I took a mindfulness course last semester." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Oh yeah, it was a what do you call those extra classes? Um,
Yeah, like a seminar or
elective,
some elective.
an
Yes. Okay.
elective." She took a mindfulness class, which is Bentley is known as like one of the best business schools, certainly in the Northeast. But
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
great. I mean, it's just so
Y-
great. And she was
And
telling me about what she learned in mindfulness.
yeah, and it wasn't like a common hour class, like once a week, once that
It was a
semester. Hey,
class
it was a
class.
class, and
That was
that's what
for credit.
yeah, yeah,
And
and that should be part of it. That should be part of
hallelujah
it.
to that, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
because I mean, at all the tools that you get from all the other classes that you might have taken
Yeah,
in your program.
exactly.
Communications, marketing, business, some
Yeah.
business electives, but nothing that was gonna help you. It sounds stupid, but nothing that was gonna help you with life. You know what I mean? You go through college, you achieve your degree. There's a certain script that you can follow to work hard,
Mhm,
to network, to get a
mhm.
job,
Right,
and you follow a career path that's generally laid out for you,
right,
generally. But
right,
there's nothing
exactly.
that teaches you how to deal with the hardships of life. I mean, I've been out of school for a long time, but we were never taught how to deal with hardships at all. It was about how to achieve the next rung on the ladder, but you were never told
Mm,
about how to deal with the pitfalls, that as you're
mhm.
going up, you're gonna come back down a little as you move up.
Right,
So
right.
that's encouraging that you see that
Isn't
out
it?
there. Yeah,
It
very,
is.
very.
It's so encouraging. So, you know, yes, we have more available to us than before. And that's partly the reason why when I do my mindfulness, I want to first start working with the elderly community
Oh, yeah.
because they have been impacted so much by COVID and they still are. They're still living in this world and they're so isolated. And they also they grew up in that world where they didn't talk about feelings and they didn't talk about emotions and, so I want to start with that demographic because, I volunteered at the local community senior center during COVID. So I got to know a few of them. And so that's going to be my entrance into mindfulness, partly because, I definitely think it's not that I'm practicing, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit more lower key than I'm not going to dive right into working with adolescents.
Yeah, of course,
That's
of
a little
course.
more complicated. Um,
Yeah,
so
those people that are further along in their life, it's incredible as soon as you're made aware of what it is
yeah,
and how you can use it. I mean, I haven't taken any classes on mindfulness. I haven't taken any certifications on mindfulness, but my conversation with my kid is much different than my conversation with my dad.
right.
My family is Colombian, South America, Colombia. Um, the Latino cultures can be very macho,
Yes.
very stoic. They don't talk about emotions, don't cry, don't,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. And I don't
Hmm.
fault my dad for that. That's just the society that he grew up in. But I don't
Culture.
know
Yeah.
anything. I don't know anything about I knew what was stressing him out,
Right.
right? Coming here as an immigrant, but I
Hmm.
never heard him talk about his emotions
Hmm.
and what pushed or
Yeah.
drove his emotions. But my kid already knows what I'm scared of,
Oh,
and
that's
he's like,
great.
"You're scared, daddy?" I'm like, "Yeah, like, of
Mhm.
course." Um, and it's not like a checkbox like I have to tell my son. For me, it just goes without saying. I've always tried to be an honest person where I try to say what I'm
Mhm.
feeling or thinking
Yeah,
because that way we could really get to the crux of what's going on.
that's so true.
But I try to talk to him, not my son, not so much as a coach and not so much in the
Mhm.
language of adults, but finding a way for him to express what he's thinking, what he's feeling, asking him because I know from my own experience with anxiety that holding on for it for so long and not really feeling like you have an outlet, it
Sure.
just builds and builds and you feel more and more tense. So I want him to get him and his little brother's 3, he doesn't give a shit about anything yet, but, my 7-year-old, he's becoming aware of, like, when kids don't wanna play with him or who his friends are and who he can go to, and I don't want those negative experiences to kind of imprint on him that that's his value, that
I
that's his
know.
worth, that that's his identity. So I try to ask him just to breathe out everything he's feeling, or else it gets stuck inside you and it kind of just, perpetuates itself,
Yep.
extrapolates, and just kinda gets bigger and bigger. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, you hit so many points as you were going through the list of what you were reading, that just makes sense, and I
Yeah.
I look forward to providing more of those tools to him.
It
Um,
sounds like you're doing it. Sounds like you're practicing mindfulness right in your own home. So, yeah.
trying to, Jill, I'm trying.
Yeah, already I could tell. I mean, they're lucky kids because just the breathing, just the letting it out, just the even talking about, like you said, a that's what Brene Brown talks about in this book is naming the different emotions. It's like that's part of in the beginning, they talk about, like, I don't even know, they name, like, I don't know, say there's 200 emotions in the whole book of emotions. And then they talk about the fact that most people don't know what emotions are. So again, you're starting to define them to your son so that he's familiar with them, so that he understands. Otherwise, when we're little, we're like, I don't even know what I'm feeling. I just feel this. I don't
Yeah.
even know what it is.
Yeah, you don't have to have the right words for it, just, off the top of your head, what is it? How do you describe it kind of
Right.
thing?
Right. Exactly.
Um, Jill, have you read any, other of, Brene Brown's books at all or no?
I haven't. I have not, and now I probably will. There's some other authors that I have read a lot of. Cheryl Strayed, um, Elizabeth Gilbert.
Mhm.
Um, the a lot of well, I guess I like female authors, and I
Nothing wrong
like
with that.
they're strong women that have gone through a lot of different experiences and have a great story to tell. So Brene Brown she's incredible, and I think I will read more.
She's funny as
About
hell too.
Yeah.
She's funny
So
as hell. She's got,
yeah, she
because
is.
somebody has mentioned her in some of these networking forums that I go to, so I looked up her podcast, and she's brilliant.
Yeah, she's
But she's
incredible.
funny. She's funny as hell. So I appreciate that
Yeah.
dichotomy of, at moments she's brilliant, and then at
Yes.
other moments she just lets out
I
and
think
enjoys it.
that's why I enjoyed the book so much, because that's also too how Elizabeth Gilbert is and Cheryl Strayed is. They can, oh yeah, you can just chuckle out loud constantly at what they're writing, even though they might be talking about the saddest thing in the world. They'll just,
Yeah, yeah.
segue to something that's, you know. So yeah, I think yeah. So I'm looking forward to reading a little bit more, or even just like watching her podcast or audiobooks by Brene Brown. So yeah, but it was my
Um,
first.
so you said you went into it thinking I'm going to learn a lot about mindfulness, and then it kind of moved towards really learning about yourself. Just out of curiosity, in the time that you've gone through this, how have you seen it change who you are or your work? Like, what are the things that stand out where now having this knowledge, these tools, this lifestyle, it's a lifestyle to me.
Mhm.
Um, how has that kind of shaped things to look differently than they did, before you started that course?
I think there definitely are moments that in the course, through some of our classes online, and then at the retreat, it's always like in a class
Mhm.
environment where probably through one of the practices that it touched upon something that I was able to kind of let something go, or not let something go or let myself feel a certain way, like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, it's okay to feel this, or it's this is why I feel that, or just a release almost,
Yeah.
and I think it's just we go, 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 we don't stop. And
We
then
keep going and we collect. Like, we
yeah, and
collect
then
stuff and put it on our back and just keep going forward kinda
right. So
thing.
then sometimes, when you're in these classes and you're going through stuff, yeah, there's gonna be stuff that like hits you. And then the other thing I will say is I am able to um so I might have a million things to do, but I am now okay with just saying, you know what, I am gonna just kind of tune into this, which is a mindfulness thing, or this, I'm looking out my window and just watching the trees and the
Mhm.
breeze. And I'm going to get into a mindfulness moment or a mindfulness 10 minutes. Last night, I thought I sent you that email. I thought I hit send, but I guess I was kind of already kind of going into I need to go. And I watched two of my classes, which are are recorded. If you miss
Okay.
them, you can watch them. And I just gave myself that gift. I just said,
You gave yourself the gift of not responding to John's email.
no, I sent the email. It got stuck today. Anyway, it literally, and
I
then
know what you
you
mean, though,
can
I know.
see at the bottom of my email, I say, look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So you knew I wrote it with the,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, it didn't send. So anyway, but then I spent the rest of the evening um, after my mindfulness course of the night, but watching two from previous that I missed because you
Mhm.
have to make up your missed classes.
Mhm.
So I just said everything else can wait, and I wasn't able to do that ever before.
Mm.
And I'm able to go into those times and it's self-preserve and it's nice, it's really nice. And the truth is that, the world is different. And even in the corporate world, if I were back in the corporate world, things are a little more accepting. Not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to go to that meeting and I'm going to just do my
Yeah.
mindfulness.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? If I'm paying more attention to myself, or if I don't, when you get those, like I used to call them rapid fire emails,
Yeah.
um, and I was very diligent about getting back to everybody. When you work for 180 attorneys, it's pretty rapid.
Mhm.
It's okay to just shut down and say, I'm going to get back tomorrow.
Yeah.
No one's dying here. We're not saving a life tonight, you know?
Yeah. That's a great
So,
point to make. It's like, I've realized, like, the things that stress me out, because there's a fair amount of stress to have. It has to be something that's very high priority,
yeah.
like
And
close to like your
yeah,
physical being.
right.
Everything else is not tangible. Everything else is like ideas,
Hmm.
attitudes, emotions. But I mean,
Yeah,
unless it's something that's physical, because you brought up life and death, unless it's something that's physically on the line,
yeah,
like,
right. And
take
I
a breath, you
know,
will
right.
address it, but
Yeah.
don't put
But
that extra
and
pressure on
and
yourself.
the thing is I know, looking back at the time at which I went through my difficult crisis,
Mhm.
I know why I kept going the way I did. I was in fear. She talks about fear in the book, and I was in fear. I was in fear of not being able to support my family.
Cool. Yes. Yes.
I was in fear. I
Yes.
I needed to reach that goal. I needed to reach that goal. And so I was doing everything. So it didn't matter. I had to just keep going.
Mhm. Mhm.
So again, if I if in my practice in the future, if I'm helping others, I'm just going to try to help them realize that you, you can keep climbing your mountain, but it's okay to take breaks for yourself. You will be better the next day if you do whatever amount of time you need to take for yourself. And we live in a world where most often we're still protected.
Yeah. It's amazing how you can do that even without changing your behavior. Like, meaning a year ago, like, my mental health wasn't that good. I was having my own difficulties. I needed to
Yeah,
take more time for myself, right?
right,
I needed to, the self care. You had to be selfish every once in a while. And the crazy thing is, nothing really changed.
right,
Nothing really changed. It was more about the expectations. So whoever I was providing to in the past still got what they needed,
right.
but I didn't put that pressure on myself to do it by a certain date or whatnot.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they got a better product. And I mean product, whether it's a business client, a relationship,
Hmm.
a better end result, because it was coming from a better, healthier place for me.
Absolutely. And
So
that's why they talk about wellness and mindfulness is so important in the workplace.
yes. Yeah.
They have the research to prove it. They
Yes.
have the research. Take care of your employees.
That's what I always
They're
say, is like, even if you don't look at it from the, mindfulness,
Mhm.
woo, whatever you want to look at,
Sure.
standpoint,
Mhm.
look at it at the very least then from a business standpoint. May-
Absolutely.
Maybe you don't have to believe in its effects, but the research is there
The
that it
research is
leads to
there.
better bottom line, top line, and whatnot. So
Yep.
when they don't, it's like, wow, like, there's even proof that it helps business, and you're still not listing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping that they are. Like I said, I'm trying to keep myself a little outside of the corporate world. I work with a lot of corporate people at Connecticut Women's Council, but we're a council, we're a nonprofit organization, so it's not like I'm grinding the bottom line anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Jill, how would you explain the benefit of this book to somebody who hasn't read it, that you want to kind of entice to read it? regardless of what industry they're in, what would you, in a short kind of brief synopsis or message, what would you share with them to kind of convey the importance of
Mhm.
this? And I know you've given a lot of great examples, but
Yeah.
what's kind of like that last ditch message just to drive it home?
I would say, a lot of what I learned in this book is kind of like the work I said, like what I learned in mindfulness is like not about mindfulness, it's about me.
Mhm.
I feel like this book is a way that can help someone do that. You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay. It's good to understand my emotions or what they are, or oh, is this why I feel this when I have a disappointment? Or is this why I act the way I do when something is triggered within me? Is that why I'm like that with that person? Or is that why I am the way at work? You know what I mean? I've realized things about me, how something might trigger me. Again, it's typically related to fear or being afraid,
Uncertainty.
uncertainty. It's our, again, it starts by saying, she explains to her readers what is happening emotionally for us on a biological and a biographical level.
Yeah.
Again, biological, we're made the way we are. And then we have our biography, our story, and
Yes.
all that connected. That is who we are, and we are each our own unique imprint. And so, and that's why, like, people in different relationships, everyone is different with everyone because we're two different imprints put together. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it could be a work person, it could be your roommate, it could be your boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So I would say the last nugget is just, you'll learn a lot about yourself, and you'll learn more about emotions, and it explains a lot. It's like it's a lot more almost technical than I thought.
Mhm.
She's a researcher. I mean,
Yeah.
she gets really nitty gritty, but like I said, she's funny too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's like having your own little mini mindfulness class.
Amazing. Amazing, just because I think, yeah, there's nothing like, what I've said always is, like, there's nothing wrong with emotions, like, there's nothing wrong with what you wanna say, it's how you say it. There's nothing wrong with emotions, it's how you translate it, how you demonstrate it. It's that kind of emotional intelligence to stop, recognize it, and then, "Okay, how am I gonna deal with it?" Instead of getting it, wrapped up in that never-ending tornado of or rabbit hole of an emotion that you just go down.
Right.
Um, so I'm looking I it's one that I have to get on my list. I'm looking forward
Yeah,
to
yeah.
reading it.
I absolutely, and I did a combination of reading it and the audiobook.
Okay.
So that was really helpful. She was great to listen to on the audiobook because I think her sense of humor would come out more too.
Yeah, if you enjoyed that, definitely check out her podcast. I
Okay.
think it's the Dare to Lead one that I think she has 2, but the Dare to Lead one is the one that I've listened to the most.
Okay.
And she'll have, other thought leaders on there, like, Adam Grant, Daniel
Mhm.
Pink. She'll have actors on there,
Oh, neat.
a lot of, musicians, a lot of
Oh,
great,
I
guests.
love music, and I couldn't help but notice your guitar. So that's cool that she has musicians. I didn't
Yeah,
realize
yeah.
that.
So it's not just limited to business, but I think she does have artists as well.
Oh, that's cool. That's very cool.
So, Jill, in wrapping up, is there anything that you want to mention about what you're up to? Is there anything that you want to share about anything you have coming up or anything else that you might want us to know about?
I would just say, stay tuned for when I am certified as a mindfulness facilitator, because I'm sure I'll, have more to say about that at that point. I'm not, shaping it out or doing anything with it until after I'm certified and after I have experience. So stay tuned on that. And in regards to, I will just say, anyone that's listening to this that either works for a nonprofit or cares about a nonprofit, um, One Hope Wine is a great way to raise not only funds but awareness for your nonprofit. Anyone, or like if you just like to help a nonprofit, I work, I work with individuals in private homes. We raise money for nonprofits all the time. We share wine and we give back. So it's a super easy thing to do. And it's just a beautiful part of life, sharing wine and as we say, pouring with a purpose, because
Ah, I
that's
like
really what
that.
it is.
I like
So
that.
yeah.
Yeah, Jill, anything you might share on social media about that,
Sure.
anything
I'm
at
always
all?
sharing. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't share that much. I'm not an oversharer.
No, I know, I
I
know,
try to
I
keep it
know.
all balanced.
Yeah.
So, yes, but
But
this has been great. Thank you so much for having me.
no, thank you for telling me about the book. It shows me that I really need to pick up a copy and add it to my list that I've of books that I've bought and have yet to get to, but
Oh,
I'll get
good.
to it at some point.
Yes, you will. Or the audiobook to listen in your car.
Yeah, I might have. I'm not an audiobook person, but with her, I might have to just because I enjoy just her
Yes.
voice, her
Her voice
energy,
is
and
great.
yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. So it's really good. It's a great way to get through it.
I'll get to it. I'll get to it at some point. But thank you, Jill, for sitting down with me on this conversation when we talked about Atlas of the Heart, mapping meaningful connection and the language of human experience. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through the book, your thoughts, and your history and past with me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and I'm sure I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. If there's anything that I might have missed that should have asked but didn't get to, or we're limited on time, and um, just let me know.
I
If I
will.
could get the question out to Jill, I'm sure she'll respond. Uh, I just don't want to. I want to make sure that I covered everything, and I know sometimes that I don't. But
Oh, that's
if
okay.
so, in any case, I guess I'm just still reeling from this conversation
I
and
know
just kind
it's a
of
lot. See, you're learning a lot about yourself. And that's what happens through this
yeah.
experience. I'm telling
That's
you, it
yeah.
catches you off guard. It
Yeah,
just
it
does.
really does. That's a side effect of this series that I didn't anticipate.
Right.
I knew there'd be great stories. I
Yeah.
knew there'd be great books, great people's lives and what they wanted to share. But I didn't realize in our banter back and forth how much I would really absorb what people were sharing with me. So I'm very
Yeah.
lucky that that happens.
I know it's very cool. And it's just really great that you do this for everybody.
No, I appreciate that so much, Jill. In any
Yeah.
case, thank you everybody for watching, listening, and take care. I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye.